Hello everyone, Steve Angel with Traditional Outdoors. I wanted to put a quick video together. I've had people just bugging me about showing them how to recreate the speed hitch rope for a lock-on stand. But before we get into that, I want to give you a little bit of information about the stand. And first and foremost, what I'm going to be showing you here, you do at your own risk. I have no way of knowing what kind of rope you use, whether you do what I'm going to show you correctly. Again, at your own risk. I've been using this for several years now. In fact, the original goes back to the late 80s when I used it, and I've never had a problem with it. But what I'm about to show you, I trust it, use it. Always use a safety harness. That should be understood without even saying it. But again, just you do this at your own risk if you choose to do so. The Loc-On stands were around in the late 80s through the early 90s. Awesome company, awesome stand. I'm not sure exactly what happened to them, but they eventually went out of business. There's a couple of different models. This one is the Loc-On Limit. It's got an expanded metal bottom, as you can see. It weighs right at 7 pounds, I think, in the configuration that I'm going to show you. There's also a model with a plastic base. Great stand again, a little bit heavier, and I have been told that in colder climates it can make a little noise. I've never had that problem with it, but your mileage may vary, so just keep that in mind. But these are solid, they're quiet. I've never had a problem out of these. And this is a spare I just picked up. It's not the one I've been using, but it will be put into service this fall. So these stands came in two different methods of attaching them to the tree. The most common was a simple chain, probably an 1.5 inch length size, and it bolted to the right side of the stand and would come around and it would hook in this little eye hook here, and that was it. Heavier, bit noisy. I don't mind using the chain on models. If it's a stand, I'm going to leave in place, but if it's something that I'm using as a portable option, I hate the chain. It just makes too much noise. So the other option that they had was this, if I remember correctly, they called this the speed hitch rope. And what this was you had a 3/8 inch nylon rope. Again, it's hooked on an eye bolt on one side, but you've got this sliding mechanism that allows you to lengthen or shorten this rope to fit around different trees, and then this hook in the end hooks in this eye bolt just like the chain would. Much quieter, much lighter. But if you find one with this, great, but it is 20 some years old. I wouldn't trust it. Plus, there's better materials available today to make this rope out of, so that's why I'm going to show you how to recreate this rope. Now, to do this, you're going to need a few things. One, you're going to need the rope. I use 1/2 inch Amsteel. I would use Amsteel rope, but I use the 1/2 inch. I go a little bit larger just because it gives me a little bit more weight distribution on the metal parts, so I figure it's going to wear a little longer. If you're planning on leaving this out, this is for a portable setup. Squirrels will chew this, although this rope is so strong, you can pick up a vehicle with this rope. In fact, they use this in winches. And I want to say the static weight limit on this rope is something like 19,000 pounds. I'll try to look it up and put it in the video notes, but it's very strong and it'll float. It's that light. It will float. So you need a length of rope, and I want to say it's somewhere around 90, let's say 100 inches of rope. So roughly, we're going to measure this out, and I can give you more specifics here in a minute. You will need to pick up an S hook. You'll only need one, but these typically come in packs of 2, and this is a 3-inch model. And what you do is you'll take this, get you a hard surface and a fairly big hammer and a pair of pliers, and you want to beat this down to make it into a figure 8. One side of this will bolt onto the stand to replace the chain. If you find one with a rope model, you don't need this. But if you have a chain model and you want to replace it, you'll need to make one of these. But it bolts to the right side of the stand, and then you'll just have one left over if you pick up another one of these later. You need a method of getting the rope through itself. I do a lot with this Amsteel rope, so I went ahead and bought several fids. This is a fid for a 1/2 inch rope, and this is one I will be using. There are other ways to do this, so you can decide whether or not you want to go buy one of these, but I will be demonstrating with the fid. You'll need some electrical tape. I'll show you what this comes in for, but it's basically to keep the rope attached to this fid while you're pulling it through itself. you'll need a notepad and a pencil or something to write on when you take your measurements, a tape measure, and a Sharpie just to mark up your rope. So that kind of tells you what we've got, what we're going to be doing. I'm going to pause just a minute, get the stand out of the way, and get the rope set up here so we can do some measurements, and then we'll get into making our rope. Okay, so I've got the rope, the factory rope off the stand. Again, if yours had a chain, you won't have this, but maybe it'll give you a little bit better idea what we're dealing with. So this stays affixed to the stand on the right side all the time, and the rope can slide through here. You've got the speed hitch here, which is a sliding mechanism that allows you to lengthen or shorten that rope depending on what you need to do. And then once you have it in place, when you put pressure against this loop and against the stand, it's not going to slide. It's very solid. It will not give. So that's what we're going to be recreating. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get some measurements. To do that, I'm going to slide this speed hitch all the way up against my permanent loop, okay? And I'm going to measure from the end of the loop that I used to affix it to the stand down to where this sliding mechanism starts. And I think that's around a foot. So it's actually 13 inches. So I'm going to write 13 inches down because that's where I know my rope needs to come out of itself when we start putting the splice together. The other thing I'm going to measure is I'm going to measure the actual length of this the slider. And this one is 3 inches, but I'm going to make it a little longer and make that 4 inches. Okay? And then the last thing we need to measure is we need to measure from here to the end of this rope, which I've already done. I didn't want to do that because the tape measure makes so much noise on the video. But from here to the end of this is 90, I think it's 96 inches, 95 inches. So from right here where this loop, with this eye hook's going to stay, to the end of this long piece of rope is 95 inches. Now that can be a little bit longer or shorter depending on the size trees you want to use, but that's what the factory rope is, and that's what we're going to recreate. Okay, so I've got my rope laid out here. I've got my measurements. Now we're going to start putting all this together. Now the first thing I need to do, I've created my figure 8 with my eye bolt. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tag end of this rope, the new rope, through this eye bolt. So that's going to create my loop, my adjustment loop that goes on the far side of the stand. So this will bolt to the stand with this little bolt here. It's got a self-locking head on it. That'll bolt to the right side of the stand. And here is my loop. Now I should have said this is actually created using a Brummel lock splice. And there's several videos on how to do this on YouTube, so I'm going to put a link to one in the notes of this video. It's very simple to do, and you'll use that FID to do this, just like I'm getting ready to show you on this sliding mechanism. So Brummel lock splice. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure. You remember we measured the old rope from this loop to the eye hook, and it was 13 inches. So we're going to measure that first. And again, none of this has to be exactly perfect, but you want it pretty close. So I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm going to make a mark here on that rope at 13 inches. Just like that, so I can see what I'm working with. And then we said that the distance between that mark, which creates our slider, was 4, so I'm going to make another mark at 4 inches. And now I've got a mark at 4 inches, 13 inches, and then 4 inches back. That tells me that this is where my slider is actually going to be created. Now this is where this gets kind of cool. So what I'm going to do to create that slider is I'm going to feed this end of the rope back into itself to create that sliding mechanism in this rope. So to do that, I'm going to take my fid. It's got a sloped angle here on one end and a rounded point on the other. The sloped end is hollow, so you can slide this rope up into it. You don't have to go up in there far. That's what the electrical tape is for. And then once you've got that placed in there like this, we'll take our electrical tape and we'll just go around this thing a couple of times, and that just keeps this from sliding out when you're feeding it into the rope. And you want to keep this fairly neat, just so it doesn't create any resistance as it's going through that rope. But there you can see what that looks like. And now we're going to come back here and we're going to find our first mark. Now this is the 13-inch mark that we took first, and this is the 4-inch mark between those two. And we want to come in on the back side of this. So to do this is actually fairly easy. You just push this rope together and you'll see it expands out. And when it expands out, it makes it very easy to take this fid right there, right next to your mark, and slide it up inside this rope. It's hollow. So you just keep it bunched up and work its way down, staying inside that hollow part of the rope until you get to your second mark. And then somewhere around that second mark, you'll push that rope back, that fid back through, and now it's inside the rope. Hope that comes through on the camera well enough. Now, you just take and pull this until you get that rope all the way through. Then you can take your tape off, because you don't need the fid anymore at that point. So we'll take that tape off, we'll set our fid down, and now we can pull this all the way up. And now what you have is you have the same rope as the factory, recreated, but with lighter and much stronger rope than what you had before. So real briefly, to show you how all this works now. So you've got this end goes onto the stand permanently. This end affixes to the back. We're going to bolt this on in a second. And then you've got this slider. And you can lengthen or you can shorten, but once you put pressure against this end and this end, the two that are making contacts, it will not move. No matter which way you lengthen or shorten, it will not move. So one way slides, now it's locked. It will not give. So you take your bolt that came in the stand, and we're going to put it right back in this little hole here. And I'm not going to tighten this up for the purpose of this video, but now this end stays attached. And again, this is where you would adjust or lengthen. So we can shorten that, slides back in place. And then this end with the Brummel lock splice comes over and hooks, and now you're on the tree. And that's exactly how much noise it makes putting it on the tree. Very easy, will not move, very secure. So, you know, I hope this video helps. I know there's a lot of people that have these stands and have that old rope out there because they've messaged me and asked me about it. So I hope this is helpful. Please subscribe to the video channel. Look for us on the podcast side of Traditional Outdoors on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, you name it, we're out there. Please leave a comment, and hope you have a great amount of success this fall. Take care, everyone.